Okay, so now let's alter this table here. Oh, not alter, but we'll leave it as is. And let's go. Well, let's go back to the other page, the data usage right here. Okay, if you refresh this data usage, you'll see that the view is not listed here because it doesn't contain any data, right? So if you want that, if you want that view to contain data also, then you need to create an index for that view. So let's go do that, and then we will come back and refresh it. So here, I'm going to create an index for the view called VW buyer. So create index. I'll just do like the normal way to create index, and it will prompt some errors. So it's gonna have it's kind of good because it guides you. Index, I'll call it IDX or just IX. This is the buyer table, so just do that, right? On not the buyer table, but on the view. Okay, so view buyer. If you create an index on a table, it'll be different. So here I'm doing on the buyer. And you have to pick a column. So let's just say the ID is fine. So the buyer ID. In this case, I use the just BID, right? The alias. So on that column BID, that will be the index. And click and save. I might get an error because it's expecting a cluster index. So yeah, so you need to create an index on the view because the view is not schema bound. Right, so that's one of the rules, right? What the rule says, you have to supply the schema. If you remember down here, okay, must have schema binding option. So let's do that rule first, and then we need to alter the view in that case. So go back up here, alter this view, keep thing as is, and we need to say with schema binding. Okay, when you do schema binding, it's required, remember the two name, two parts. So it will be just DBO because the schema is just DBO. If you change it to something else, just make sure you reference the correct schema name. If you don't put that here, if you forgot, again, just show you that if you do that, it will, no, not here, from the buyer over here, okay? Maybe like that. If I just run with the schema, it's going to ask me to, or force me to put a second part here. So you can see that cannot schema bind view. It's invalid binding. You must have a two-part format. Okay, so that means that the table, all the tables have to have a two-part format. So if you have a join statements, you need to put two parts in here if it's a schema binding. Okay, so now if I put DBO.buyer here from the from table buyer, and then create, alter that again, and now we're good to go. Okay, so now it's been schema bounded, and then now I can go back to my index and run it again. Probably ask me to create a cluster index because it doesn't have one, right? If you look at the view here, there's no cluster index, so I cannot just create a non-cluster index because non-cluster index doesn't store data in the view. Let's see. Okay, so you can see it says cannot create index in the view. It does not contain unique cluster index. So you have to put that in there. It has to be unique as well. So put unique, clustered, index, and then the whole thing there. So now it should be okay. So go ahead and process that. So we're good to go. And if you go down here and refresh your buyer view, and under the index you see that there is a index, cluster index on that view. Now the data, the view now has data. Okay, it stores data. What kind of data? Well, just the ID data, that's all, just that column. The other columns are omitted, right? They only use the column. So if you go to the disk usage and refresh this screen here, you'll see that the view is now added to that list and has some data now. This should show you that a clustered index, a really clustered index view has data. So it's treated like a regular index. Okay? Okay, so the next one is you can create a view on a view, right? So we have the VW buyer. Let's just say I want to create another view on the buyer, but I only want to show maybe just the, again, back to the first name and last name without the ID, right? Because this one here has all three. So if I do this again, you see that it has all three columns, okay? If I want to omit the VID again, then I can create another view down here. Create view, view for buyer, and then I guess I don't know, view buyer. I don't know how you say it, but it's a buyer on the view. So and then select just the F name and the L name, okay, from the view buyer, not from the buyer table, from the view. So you have to know its column names, right? So now if I run this, you see that I have created another view on another view, okay? And so if I select data from that new view, the VW buyer, V buyer, it shows just those two fields, the first name and last name. And if it has the third, has the complete column, yeah, I can also add data and update data and so forth from here too. And then if you go over here in the views table folder, refresh it, you see that I have another view here, and it's just like any other view. So what about index? Can I create index out of this? Right? So if you want to create index, you go through the whole thing again. You have to make sure this is with schema binding, and then I have to use the DBO dot view right here, DBO. And then if I go ahead and run that, well, I didn't alter that actually. Alter the view, okay, and then now I can create an index. Let me copy this, put it down here, call it buyer from the VW buyer, and column is, let's use both of them, the F name and L name. Okay, you make both of those unique. Remember, you cannot have duplicate data. And let's see if this works. Yeah. Okay. So it violates one of the rules, right? It says, because it references another view here. So if you look at those rules we just mentioned earlier, must not reference other views. Okay, so if it references another view, you cannot create an index view. Okay, so so that's the violation there. Let me know if I go too fast or if you lost, just let me know, okay? So this is showing you that you cannot create index on a view that is referencing another view here. But you can join tables, right? You can join two views if they have something in common, just like tables, okay? See, the next one I want to show is So this is, you can put here failed, right? Let's see. Okay, so let's say you want to select the following. Select everything from the buyer table with the B, join the orders table with the O, right? If you do that, then you need the on statement on B dot buyer ID, match that with the order buyer ID. That's what the foreign keys are for, right? So now I can select all the buyers that order something on the order table here. And if you select that statement, you see a list of all the items that is bought by the buyer. Also show the order, all these records from the seller too, seller ID as well. So these are from the buyer table, these are from the orders table. Okay, it comes everything here. What if I want to create this view, right? You can go and leave that as is. Just say create view, VW, I call it buyer orders as, and then select all that, right? And say execute, you get an error. So now it's okay here when I select and view the data, it's fine. But when I create a view, okay, it doesn't work. View function must be unique. Okay, so column names in each view or function must be unique. It says column names must be unique. Well, if you look at this result set here, you see that there are two identical columns, buyer ID and buyer ID, right? So you have duplicate columns, so you can't just use a star in this case. You have to select every column in there, or just the columns you want to output. Okay, so in this case, I could just pick either here or that one, doesn't matter, and then the rest I have to pick manually, add them all. Okay, so you have to say here, I want the B buyer ID. Okay, you want from that, you want the B first name, B last name, then the O order ID, and I don't want the buyer ID again. I just want the total, for example, and the seller too, maybe. Comma. Okay, so now because the ID here is unique, so therefore that should work. If I select that again, just to show that that's what I want, and then I can go ahead and create a view for that. So there you go. And if I display it, it's just the same as this statement here. I get the same result. Okay, so select all from the view buyer orders. You see that that's what I get. Okay. The hard part is like if you have this one here, if you join, go this, from the buyer the orders, and also join on the seller table for the S. On the S dot seller ID is related to the order dot seller ID. Okay, if I do that, you can see there are a lot of duplicates in here. Okay, I have the buyer ID, the seller ID, the first name, and last name are all duplicates. So that's even worse, right? So now if you want to pull out both the buyer and seller names, then you have to do a lot of aliases in here. Okay, so you have to do like here you have to say b dot buyer ID, that should be occur only once. B dot first name, that has to be referenced with a new name, maybe like buyer first name. Okay, has to be unique, because later on, if I have the seller, if I put like first name, it's the same thing. I get a first name back. So we have to make it so that it's seller first name. You can see that can be troublesome sometimes. It's just one of those two here, for example. Let's see if I do that, execute. So here I have just that, and then I can create a view for that. VW buyer orders seller. Okay, so pass here. Run all three statements here. Create view. So here I have it. Okay, if I go ahead and then select that from the VB buyer seller order seller here. So now that's okay because the columns are now unique. Okay, so that's a lot of work if you want to have like 4 or 5 or 6 tables and they have a lot of duplicates in there. Okay, so you have to rename them. And then now, because they're alias, then when you reference this table, this view here, you have to use this whole column name here and not the first name itself. So that whole thing there. And as you can see, it can be a little bit tedious in typing. Okay, so you can see that I have joined 3 tables together and get some results I want, which is kind of similar to what I showed you earlier in the Ventures Work table, right? So basically a view is, that's all it is. A view is a collection of select statements. That's all it is. Okay, and then once you like the result, then just put that into a view and you're done. Do a few exceptions. Just make sure the columns are unique and so on. So one more I want to show you is which one was it? I want to show. Oh, the with option. Okay, so let's go back to just what we do with the seller is fine. So the seller, say create view, VW seller. Okay, we'll keep the default column names. Select everything from seller. Okay, so that's pretty easy. If I just click view, select that, run that, I'm done. So select everything from the view seller. Select that, press F5 shortcut, and I got that result. No problem there. Okay, now I want to modify this view. Let's go down here, copy this, and I'm going to alter this view, and I'm going to say select from the seller only where the, let's just say that last name like the following contains, probably like start with K. Okay, start with K, and then anything after that. If you just do that, right, you only get Kent. That's the only one we have. Okay, if you alter the view with that, alter it. If I select from the view, I only get Kent because that's all I get. Okay. If I want to insert to the seller's table, so I do insert into the view seller. The values are, the ID will be a 4, and then we'll put Harry Potter. notice that the last name is not K. We'll see if this works or not. And it's okay. Why? If I select that from the seller, it should still show just the K. If I show it from the original seller table, it shows all 4 of them, right? Okay, even though I put...
Is there a way to constrain that?
Yeah, because we didn't put that keyword there. So after that one here, we're going to alter this again, and we want to say with check option, okay? Now this is the constraints here. You force that to forces all the last name here is just selecting from that, but really when you input into the data table, all the last name has to start with K. Okay, so we go ahead and put the with check option at the end here and alter that again one more time. Okay, so now if you look at the view, that's fine. If you insert the 5th person, let's put Harry, something like that is fine. That should be okay because K falls in there. Okay, as you can see, if I show the data back, I get 2 people there. From the original table, I get all 5 of them. Okay. Now, if I change that to L, that will fail because L is no longer part of K. And I also want to change it to 6 just in case. And you see that it fails because it fails that check option. Okay. And if you have another layer inside the seller table that you know, has another, let's say you have to start with an H for the first name, then that also fails because it's going to check them there too, right? So another security level before you insert the actual data to the table, you can do this is to safeguard your code or your data before you actually insert it. Very useful for like you know, SQL injection and all those stuff. Okay. I think that's pretty much everything here, right? Anything I missed? Scale binding, we got that. Drop view, oh yeah, drop view is very easy. You can drop those view in a bit. Update with check option. Encryption, we did that already. Yeah, so that's pretty much everything there. Okay, so you're going to drop your views, just using the command line, you can do that. You just go here and then right click and then delete. Easiest way, right? Or just select on it and just say delete, then you're good to go. Okay, you're done. But to drop, you just say drop view and then the view name, view buyer, okay, view buy orders, and then click that. They're done, they're gone. Once I delete the view buyer, notice that in the view here I have, let's see, so once I drop it, I lost the index, right? Because the index was built on the view buyer. So up here, when we create an index on the view buyer, so let's see if it's still there. I'm going to refresh it to see that it's gone.